everybody, welcome to today's chapter. We are now on chapter 7 of A Diary of Dreams. So let's crack on. As they were driving along the highway, Ali looked to her right at Hugh, who was busy watching the roping films that he had made with Aidan. Ali could hear them on the film shouting instructions to each other and screams of joy when they roped whatever object they were aiming for. Ali looked back at the road in disbelief. She couldn't believe that they had talked her into doing this, but part of her was excited to spend some time with Ben. Not that she would admit that to herself. That morning, when she awoke, the boys were already up making breakfast with Sally and John, whilst Bill and Helen were beginning to pack up. Ali rolled back over in the car seat, pulling up the sleeping bag and trying to disguise the fact that it was daylight. She was trying not to wake from the most incredible dream, but before she had time to drift back to sleep, the car door was open, letting in a gust of cold air. Ali pulled the sleeping bag around her tighter. "Here you go, Mum," Hugh said, thrusting a glass of orange juice at her. Ali peeled back the sleeping bag and took the glass. "Thank you, Hugh." Hugh went back to cooking at the stove. Aidan was laying the table. Ali looked across at everyone. There was just Sally, John, Bill and Helen. Part of her was relieved, but she couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed that Ben wasn't there. As she swung her legs out the door, Tom and Chad came round from the back of the truck. "Morning," they said, tipping their hats at Ali. "Morning," Ali responded groggily. Ali managed to slide from the car seat across to a camping chair where she flopped. "Way too much effort," she said to herself. Sally piped up, "Good morning, sunshine. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining," in a loud, chirpy voice. Ali rubbed her face with her hands. "It's too early for that," Bill laughed as he looked at Ali. "I'll make you a cup of tea, Mum. That always makes you feel better." Ali gave Hugh a bit wary smile. "Thanks, Hugh. I'd appreciate that." Ali closed her eyes again as the sun was too bright and let her head rest on the back of the chair. Then she felt a kiss on her cheek. Her eyes shot open. It was Ben. "Morning, Miss Ali," he smiled with bright eyes. Ali couldn't get any words to leave her mouth. She looked across to where Bill and Helen were sitting. "Don't worry, we've been filled in on last night's antic," Bill said, chuckling. "Something smells good, boys." Ben moved across to where the boys were serving up breakfast. Not only did the shock of the kiss bother Ali, but the next thought filled her with fear. "What the hell do I look like?" She shuffled back in the seat to try to look at the reflection in the truck. Her eyes scanned her reflection, but then her belly rumbled, and she slid back down in her seat. "I'm too tired to be bothered about that right now." She felt a warm plate on her lap, along with the smell of bacon. Her son was most definitely a legend. "There you go, Mum." Hugh also handed her a cup of tea. "You'll feel better after that," he smiled. Ali looked at the plate. The bacon sandwich looked perfect. As she took her first bite, Ali looked around. Everyone was packing up and leaving, as the fair had come to an end. Sally and John were looking at the map. Tom was talking with Chad about dropping a few horses off at his ranch, and Ben was inviting them to the end of fair barbecue at his ranch. "Thanks, mate, but we're going to have to give it a miss this year. I need to head back," Tom said. Ali's bacon sandwich didn't last long. As she supped her tea, she began to feel human again. After listening to everyone talking about their plans, she thought she'd better start making theirs. "So, Hugh," Ali said, placing her plate on the pile of dirty pots and heading to the back of the truck to fish out the map. "Where to next? Yellowstone?" Ali said, turning back to the group. Sally avoided eye contact with Ali, trying to hide her smirk. Tom and Chad took another bite out of their bacon sandwiches. "What did I miss?" Ali asked, looking confused. "Mum, I have a plan," Hugh said, taking her hand and guiding her back to the empty chair. Ben put his plate down and dusted the crumbs off his jeans. "Well, Mum, you see, we've been talking," Hugh began. "Who's we?" Ali asked with eyebrows raised. "Me, Ben, Sally, John, Aidan, Bill and Helen." "Oh right, do I get to be a part of these plans?" Ali asked inquisitively. Yes, Mum, if you just let me finish. Ali raised her hands. Sorry, boss. Well, I'll tell you what we have planned, but firstly, you have to let me tell you the whole plan before you reply. Promise? Hugh asked. Promise. Ali replied, getting worried. Hugh took a deep breath. We are going to go and stay at Ben's. Ali felt her body brace up. Hang on, Mum, you said you'd let me finish, Hugh said, knowing very well what that look on his mum's face meant. Then, in 2 weeks' time, Sally, John and Aidan are going to come and stay for a week and we'll head up to Yellowstone together. So we are only delaying the trip by a couple of weeks. Ben says that is fine. He's got plenty of room for everyone. And then we get to go to his barbecue and you still get to go to Yellowstone. Hugh finished, not knowing how his mum would react. Ali felt betrayed and ambushed, but she didn't know why. She couldn't help but glare at Ben. It's all his fault. He has been planting seeds of ideas in my son's head and not taking into consideration all the consequences, she thought. Hugh saw his mum glaring at Ben and stepped in before his mum said something she'd regret. Mum, it's going to be fine. I know things are changing, he said, taking her hands, but my gut feeling is this is the right thing to do. And you always wanted to spend some time on ranch, and we get to spend it together instead of being stuck in a pickup driving. I think the mountain air would do you good, he said. He has got a stream near his house that you could go and sit by. Please, Mum, trust me on this, he said, giving her a hug. Ali took hold of Hugh and pulled him onto her knees. Is this what you really want? Yes, Mum, Hugh replied sympathetically. Someday I hope to be as sure of life as you are, Ali said, bewildered. Ali looked up at the people packing their things into their trucks and trailers. The fair men were busy taking down the rides, and she looked back at her son. Where did he get his faith in life from? How does he know that everything will be all right? Ali looked across at Bill for encouragement. Bill smiled and nodded his head. Okay, Ali said quietly. Hugh leapt off his lap and went over to where Aidan was sitting. Come on, Aidan, we'll wash the pots up for my mum. And off they scurried. Ali looked at the rest of them. Sally smiled with excitement at the building romance. John slapped his legs and stood up before his wife said something. Well, that's the plan. We'll meet you at the ranch in a couple of weeks and head off to Yellowstone. Come on, Sally, we had better pack up the tent. Tom and Chad stood up next. Right, we best be making tracks. They shook Ben's hand. See you soon, Ali. Ali waved back. Bill and Helen collected the chairs and took them round to the other side of the motorhome. Ali and Ben were the only ones left. Ali looked at Ben sternly. She couldn't help but feel angry, and he knew it. I hope you know what you're doing, Ali remarked. Ben moved closer to you. I do. Hugh had the idea and I think it's a great one. I'm not ready to say goodbye yet. I've only just found you. Please, just give me 2 weeks to show you. Show me what? Ali exclaimed. Share with you all the joy you make me feel whenever I'm with you. There are things going on up in the heavens and I know that you feel them too. You can't deny it, Ben smiled. Ali looked away. She knew exactly what he meant, but she certainly wasn't ready to say it aloud. Ben took her in his arms, but Ali just stayed limp. You're safe. Everything's going to be all right, he said. You won't have to lift a finger when you're at the ranch. I know you're really going to love it. I have been up all night thinking things through. I know you have Hugh to concentrate on and look after, but that doesn't mean that I can't take care of you, he whispered. Ali's head fell onto his shoulder as she couldn't hold back the tears. They were tears of fear and of hope. Ben held her close, swaying from side to side, knowing that this was a big step for her. They heard the rattle of plates. Ali pulled away from Ben and turned away from the direction Hugh and Aidan were coming from. Ali quickly wiped away her tears, looking up at the sky, trying to stop any more tears arriving. I'm sorry, she said. Ben wiped away the new tear that arrived and kissed her salty cheek. There is nothing to be sorry about. He looked into her eyes and Ali couldn't resist the feeling of relief washing over her, as she knew deep down inside that everything was going to be okay. The first time she had ever felt that since Hugh's dad was around. Things are going to be all right, aren't they? Half asking herself, half asking Ben. Yes, they are, he said softly. Ben went over to where Hugh and Aidan were helping Bill and Helen to pack things away. Right, Hugh, I'll go and load up the horses and bring the truck and trailer around. If you help your mum pack up, and then you can follow me back to the ranch. Hugh's eyes widened with excitement. He looked at Aidan and they high-fived. Hugh then looked at Ben and smiled. Ben smiled back, ruffling Hugh's hair. Ben began to walk over to where his truck was parked. Aidan looked at Hugh. I'd better go back to Mum and Dad. Okay, Hugh agreed. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. They hugged and Aidan ran back to his parents. Hugh came up behind Ali and gave her a big hug. Thanks, Mum. I love you. Ali knelt down and started hugging and kissing him all over his face. I love you too, Monkey. Ah, stop, Mum, he said, laughing. We had better get packed up before Ben gets back, Ali said. I'm on it, Mum, he said, springing into action. Bill and Helen put the table and the last of the chairs inside the motorhome and closed the door. They made their way to the back of the truck where Ali and Hugh were busy packing. I guess it's goodbye, Bill said, holding his arms out wide. Ali walked across and hugged him back. No, just see you later. Ali kissed him on the cheek. He's a good man, that Ben. You've picked well, but if he does give you any bother, I'll be straight over to read him the right act, Bill said. Ali smiled. Will do. Bill moved across to Hugh. See you later. You keep on dreaming. Hugh hugged him. Will do. Helen hugged Ali. You're welcome any time. Thanks, and if you ever want a place to stay in the UK, our door is always open, Ali replied. Bill and Helen made their way to the motorhome and got in. The engines stirred and they pulled off, honking their horn as they went. Ali and Hugh waved until the motorhome disappeared out of sight. Just as Ali was checking around, making sure they hadn't left anything, they heard a truck and trailer pull up. Hugh jumped out of their pickup and ran over. Ben wound down the window and Ali went over to join them. She couldn't help noticing how good he looked with his cap and shades on in the truck with the sound of horses munching hay in his gooseneck trailer. Yeah, he's definitely a ranchman, she mused. Ben interrupted her thoughts. If you guys follow me, we are heading over to a town a few hours away. It's not far, Ali laughed. Your American not far is my British hours and hundreds of miles. To be sure. Ben smiled at her. Part of him could not believe that he would have her all to himself for 2 full weeks. Okay, just make sure you don't lose us, Ali said, half serious, half sarcastically. Don't worry, I'm not going to lose this precious cargo. Ali blushed. Okay, Hugh, time to hit the highway. Ali cheered. Hugh ran over to the truck and turned the stereo on where Life is a Highway, I Want to Drive It All Night Long came blaring out the speakers. Ali and Ben laughed at his enthusiasm. Ali began to walk back to the pickup. Hey, miss, a kiss for the journey? Ali turned round. It's only a couple of hours. Ben took off his glasses and pulled a puppy dog look. Ali smiled and drifted towards the truck. She leaned in and gave him a kiss. I could get used to this, Ben remarked. Ali moved away smiling as she walked back to the pickup. She climbed into the truck. Hugh had settled in with his boots off and music on as they watched Ben's truck and trailer pull off in front. Ali pressed the accelerator and off they rolled. Where the brave are free and lovers soar, Ali sang. A few hours later they were turning into a driveway with a sign overhead made out of big tree trunks. The driveway wound through a valley with the mountains as the backdrop, forest to the left and open pastures land to the right. Hugh's head was already out of the window, lapping up the view. Ali had to admit that they were right, she did love it. As they neared a log cabin, Ben struck his arm out the window and indicated that they should park by the house. He carried on with the truck and trailer behind some trees. Ali parked as indicated and undid her seatbelt. The house was beautiful and had such presence, yet it still seemed to blend into the countryside. As she was getting out of the car, Ben appeared from around the trees. Hugh got out and came round to where they were standing. Do you want to help me unload and put the horses away? Ben asked Hugh. Yes, I'll just get my coat. As Hugh was getting his coat, Ben walked up to the house and unlocked the front door. "You can take your stuff in here. There's food, tea and coffee. Make yourself at home," he said to Ali. Ali reached into the truck, pulled out her handbag and made her way over to the house. As she walked through the door, she looked behind and smiled as she saw Hugh bounding along, trying to keep up with Ben's long legs. As Ali stepped through the door, her breath was taken away. In front of her was a large living room with an open fire. Straight ahead were large patio doors framing a picture-perfect view of the land behind. To the right, she saw what looked like an office, and next to this, a bathroom. To her left, there was a large kitchen with a sturdy oak table and cooking range. Tucked away in the corner of the living room was a staircase. Ali's gaze wandered up it, and there was a balcony which looked like it led onto the bedrooms. Ali placed her handbag down on the sofa and made her way to the kitchen. She lifted up the kettle and took it over to the sink, where out the window she could see a pasture full of horses. She put the kettle back and flipped the switch. Ali wondered if there was the same setup in the kitchen as in England. Cups above the kettle and spoons either left or right below the kettle. Of course it was. As the kettle hissed and then clicked, as the water came to a boil, Ali placed a tea bag in the cup and filled it with hot water. As the tea brewed, Ali leant against the worktop and looked in her surroundings. Such a beautiful home, she thought. Surely he can't live here by himself. Ali put the tea bag in the bin and poured in the milk. She made her way out the front door and went in the direction the boys had gone. As she moved past the row of trees, it opened up to a large American barn. She saw Hugh pulling a trolley twice the size of him, full of hay, to one of the stables. As she entered the barn, she saw Ben taking the tack from the trailer and putting in what looked like a tack room. The smell of the hay and the horses filled the air. "I'm home," Ali thought. "Nearly done," Hugh shouted from one of the stables. Ali meandered down the centre of the barn, looking at the horses that had just been taken off the trailer, eagerly tucking into their hay. Ben came out of the tack room and closed the door. He walked up the aisle to where Ali was stood. "Find everything all right?" he asked. "Yes, thanks," Ali said, holding up a mug of tea. "All done," Hugh said breathlessly. "Thanks, mate, that was a great help," Ben replied, looking around the barn, checking the horses one last time. "Shall we head back to the house and get ready for the barbecue?" Ben said, as Ali was reaching out and stroked a horse's head and its velvet nose. "That one is showing signs of being a great star," Ben said proudly. Ali looked into the mare's eyes, and all she could see was unconditional love, a kind of love you can only get from animals. The three of them walked out of the barn and back to the house. "Right, I better show you to your rooms," Ben said. Ali and Hugh stopped at the car to get their suitcases. Ben took hold of Ali's and brought it into the house, as Hugh pulled his mini case along on wheels. They headed across the living room to the staircase. As they reached the top, they went along the internal balcony, which overlooked the living room. Ben pointed to a small room with a single bed in. "This one's for you, Hugh." Hugh went in, dived straight onto the bed and put his hands behind his head. "Yep, this'll do quite nicely," he replied. Ben chuckled and he walked with Ali to the next room, which had a double bed, ensuite bathroom, and window looking out onto the mountains. "This one is for you," he said, looking into her eyes. "Thank you," Ali replied, taking her suitcase and putting it next to the bed. They went back onto the balcony. "And if you get scared at night," Ben said, looking at Ali, "my room's just here." He headed to a room at the end of the balcony. Ali couldn't resist being nosy as she peered round the door. It had a hand-carved wooden king-size bed, a small sofa, dresser, and large sliding doors that led out onto a balcony. On the balcony was a small table with matching chairs overlooking an incredible view of large open grassland and a small river. Ali was definitely impressed, and her mind wandered into a daydream. She thought of waking up in the morning, sliding open the doors and having a cup of tea whilst watching the sunrise. "Just in case you get scared at night and need a hug," Ben said cheekily, with his eyes twinkling. "Right, I'm going to get showered and then I'll crank up the barbecue before everyone starts to arrive, Ben stated. Ali got the hint and moved out of the doorway back to her room, where she opened her suitcase and began to unpack. Hugh popped his head round the door. Hey you, Ali said as she was hanging up one of her skirts. She saw Hugh march through her room with a towel round his waist and wash bag under his arms into the ensuite. When did her little boy get so grown up? Ali thought. As she heard Hugh singing in the shower, she slipped into the bed and thought she'd have a quick snooze. I'll just have 5 minutes sleep while Hugh's in the shower, she thought, as she closed her eyes and drifted off to sleep. Ben stuck his head through Ali's door as he was making his way downstairs. He saw Ali looking so peaceful as she slept. Hugh came out of the shower and stood next to him. He looked up at Ben. It's the first time I've seen her properly sleep. Normally she's so restless. Ben looked back at Ali, pleased that she had started to lower her barriers. No longer does he have to pass the flaming archers to enter the castle that surrounds her heart. Shall we start getting things ready for the barbecue? Ben asked Hugh. They made their way downstairs, where Ben opened up the patio door and headed over to the barbecue to light it. Ali turned over and heard laughter and talking. She opened her sleepy eyes and reached for her phone. It dawned on her that she had been asleep for 5 hours, but the bed continued to invite her back into the land of dreams. But then she heard Hugh's voice from downstairs and she shuffled in the bed to get more upright position to try and wake up. The barbecue must have started, Ali thought, rubbing her eyes sleepily whilst pulling back the duvet. She made her way to the bathroom to wash off the smell of the country fair and rodeo. As Ali was finishing getting dressed and began to brush her hair, she heard footsteps coming up the stairs. She saw Ben in the reflection of the mirror holding a cup of tea. How did you sleep? He inquired. Like a log, Ali replied. It's a very comfy bed, maybe too comfy. Ben smiled gently, running his fingertips through her hair. There's food downstairs when you're ready, Ben said as he made his way out of the room. Ali was finished getting ready, but was putting off going downstairs to meet everyone. That definitely wasn't one of her strengths. She normally has Hugh there, who knows everyone within the first 5 minutes of arriving. I can't put it off any longer, Ali said to herself in the mirror. As she headed out of the room and down the stairs, she walked across the living room to the kitchen, glancing out at the patio doors where she saw people eating and laughing and kids playing. Ali placed her mug next to the sink when Hugh came whizzing in. Excuse me, Mum, I need another plate. Ali moved out of the way of the cupboard door. Hugh pulled out a plate. Is everything okay? Ali asked. Yes, I'm Ben's chef, Hugh replied. Ali nodded and followed Hugh out of the kitchen and across the living room. As she walked through the patio doors, she saw Ben at the barbecue flipping over some steaks. She looked up and smiled at her, grabbed a plate and put a steak on it. He came across to her and pointed to a table where there was salads and rice and much more. Thanks, Ali said, taking the plate and making her way over to where the rest of the food was. Ben headed back to his barbecue where he was putting on more meat. Ali filled up her plate as she found an empty seat and tucked in. The sleep had definitely worked up an appetite. A lady came to sit next to her. Hi, I'm Lily. Hi, Ali motioned with her hands as she had a mouthful of food. Ali finished her mouthful and looked over at Lily. How are you? Ali asked. Good, thanks, Lily replied. You must be Ali. Ali looked surprised and Lily gestured over to where Hugh was. Don't worry, Hugh has been telling us all about how you both met Ben. Oh, Ali nodded, taking another mouthful of food. Ali should have known the whole town would know their story by now. There's no stopping that child in his dreams. Ali finished her meal and put the plate on the ground. Ben came across to sit down next to her with a plate full of food. Ali looked at him. Have you finished your chef duties? Ben motioned to the barbecue where there was another man supervising the grill. As he took a bite out of his burger, Ben turned to Lily. How did you get on at the fair? Good, thanks. We sold quite a lot of gear. It was a good turnout, Lily said, happy with how the past 4 days had gone. Ben nodded in agreement. Ali looked at Lily curiously. What do you sell? But before Lily could answer, Ben jumped in. The best tack around. Lily smiled at the compliment. Ben looked at Ali. Do you want any more? Pointing at her empty plate. No, I'm all right, thanks. I'm just going to digest this plate first. Maybe later. With that, he was off back to the grill. As the night wore on, everyone settled in a circle around the fire, and there was someone strumming a guitar in the background. Ben had pulled up a chair next to Ali. Hugh was busy playing with the dog. Ali suddenly realised what time it was. She got up and headed over to Hugh. Come on, it's time for you to go to bed. Oh, Mum, please, 5 more minutes, Hugh groaned. No, come on, you had a late night last night as well, Ali stated. Can Patches come with me? Hugh asked, pointing to the dog that was sitting obediently by his side. No, I don't think the dog is allowed in the house. Mum, you don't know, Hugh said stubbornly. Ali turned to Ben. A dog's allowed in the house and upstairs? Hugh wants Patches to go sleep in his room tonight. Ben looked up. Yes, sure. Just no dogs allowed on the beds. See, I told you, Mum, Hugh said. Hey, less of the attitude and upstairs to bed, Ali said sternly. The trip and all the changes had really started to wear on Ali's emotions, as she felt drained like she was going through a life detox. Hugh made his way through the patio door with Patches by his side. As Ali sat back down and took a gulp of wine, she heard Hugh from the bathroom telling Patches that he needed to clean his teeth before going to bed. She couldn't stay mad at him for long. Hugh appeared at the patio door in his pyjamas and went around everyone giving them a hug and a kiss, saying goodnight, knowing everyone by name. When he reached Ben, he climbed up onto Ben's knees and gave him a big bear hug. Night, Ben. Thank you for everything. Night, Hugh. Thank you for being a star today. Ali looked up at the night sky, trying to hold back the tears. Hugh climbed down and took hold of Ali's hand, and off they went upstairs. Ben watched as they walked into the house. Now it's a home, he thought. Ali sat back in his chair. Ben took up his usual position, draping his arm casually around the back of her chair. Ali reached down for her glass and noticed it felt heavier. She looked at Ben. Has the refill fairies been again? He chuckled. Nothing to do with me. Ali settled into the conversation around her, sharing the news of the trip and the journey so far. As she told the story, it no longer felt like a reminder of a tragedy, but an adventure with its highs and lows. For the first time for a long time, she felt relaxed and comfortable, and most of all, she felt at home. The last of the guests drifted off as Ben said goodbye. Ali collected the last of the remaining glasses and took them through to the kitchen. Ben came in behind her, twirled her around, and they started to dance around the kitchen. Ali melted into his arms. Ben spun her around and lifted her into his arms, and they embraced with a long kiss. As their lips parted, they both smiled, looking into each other's eyes. I've been waiting all night to do that, Ben said lovingly. Ben put Ali down and she picked up her glass of water. Night-night, Ali said. Night, Ben replied. Ali headed upstairs as Ben followed her, turning off the lights. Ali turned into her room. As Ben walked by, he had one final look at the incredible woman stood before him and headed to his room. Ali watched as he slowly walked into his room, and they slowly closed their doors as waves of happiness flowed around her body. So that's the end of chapter 7. We've got one more chapter tomorrow, and that's chapter 8, Dreams Becoming Reality.